I'd like to call this meeting to order. Today is Tuesday, September 11th, 2018, and this is a Prescott City Council voting meeting. Mayor Pro Tem, do you have some introductions or announcements? I see some.
Do you want to do
there's a couple mayors out here I saw earlier. Mayor Kirkendall's here. Mayor Oberg's here. Good to see you guys.
There they are.
We have a former councilman back here, Chris Kuknio. Good to see you, Chris.
Right.
Any other electeds or former hiding back there? No? Go ahead.
So would you like to do roll call first?
I'm going to do that in just a little bit.
Okay, sounds good. Hello, everyone, and thank you for being here today. It's good to see you all. It's a day that we all remember where we were on 9/11/2001. I'd like for us to remember the souls that were lost. 2,996 souls. 265 were on the planes, on the 4 planes. 2,606 in the World Trade Center and the surrounding area. 125 military personnel in the Pentagon. 343 firefighters, 71 law enforcement officers, and 55 military. I'm going to ask that we all stand and have a moment of silence as we remember these individuals. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. At this time, we'll have Father Ralph Berg with Sacred Heart Catholic Church lead us in the invocation, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance, led by Councilman Lamerson.
Please bow your heads now as we pray. Loving God, on this day of tragic remembrance 17 years ago, we remember the victims of the senseless attacks on our nation. We remember their families. And we pray for our country that government of the people, by the people, and for the people shall not perish from the earth. We come before you today to give you honor and praise. You are the source of all that is good and of all of our blessings. Thank you for every gift that you have given. We thank you for the opportunity to gather today, this day. We ask for your hand of blessing on our city council meeting. Guide and direct us so that we will be filled with wisdom, productivity, and respect for one another, and bring about the greatest good for the people of Prescott. Help us to reach our goals so that in doing our work, we may always fulfill your holy will. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Before I lead us in the pledge, you know, 911 means a lot to me. My whole family are military. I don't forgive and I don't forget. And the fact of the matter is, the American people should never forget those who want to kill us. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Father. Let's please call roll.
Mayor Mingarelli?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Orr?
Here.
Councilman Blair?
Yes.
Councilman Good?
Yes.
Councilman Lamerson?
Here.
Councilwoman Scholl?
Here.
Councilman Sischka?
Here.
All are present.
Thank you. Let's move to proclamations, please.
The first one is Constitution Week, September 17th through the 23rd, 2018.
Do we have somebody here to accept?
Come on up.
Proclamation. Whereas September 17th, 2018 marks the 231st anniversary of the drafting of the United States Constitution, and whereas it is fitting and proper to officially recognize the patriotic celebrations which will commemorate the occasion, and whereas Public Law 915 guarantees the issuing of a proclamation each year by the President of the United States of America, designating September 17th through September 23rd as Constitution Week. Greg Mingarelli, Mayor of the City of Prescott in Arizona, does hereby proclaim the week of September 17th through September 23rd, 2018 as Constitution Week. And would you ladies please address the council and the public with regards to whom you are? And thank you for being here to accept this proclamation. Thank you.
So much.
George Crook chapter.
Thank you. And would you explain who the Daughters of the American Revolution are, what you do in the city, what you do in Yavapai County, and what your focus is?
Great.
She's the president, I'll let.
Thank you.
So as the general, I don't think that's working. So as my fellow daughter here said, we are the Daughters of the American Revolution, General George Crook chapter. And we are very active in the city of Prescott. We work avidly to promote historic preservation. This last year, we did a big fundraiser and partnered with the Palace, Batterman's Auction House, and a few other institutions here. And we're able to raise enough funds to restore the floors of the Governor's Mansion at Charlotte Hall. So some of the things that you see here, we are quietly but actively and avidly working to maintain for people to see that history. So when our organization started in the 1920s, we gave the flag and the giant post to Charlotte Hall, which are across from the Governor's Mansion. So you can see a long history with this chapter. We try to keep the education going in the school systems. We partner with the schools and make sure that they receive scholarships that they need for outstanding students. We also work with JROTC and ROTC at Embry-Riddle and give them scholarships to see them continue to move forward. So those are a few things that you might see come out in the newspaper that we do. But behind the scenes, there's list after list of things that we actively participate in. So just a few people up here, but there's probably 100 ladies in the area between the chapters that you're going to see in different places working to promote patriotism. So thank you, Mayor Mingarelli and the council members, for doing this. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Next proclamation.
Oktoberfest, September 22nd, 2018.
Well, it's my privilege to do this proclamation today, and I'm excited to go to Zeitz, Germany here in a few weeks with my wife. We're going to be over there for, is it Zuckerfest? Zuckerfest. So we're
says it with the best accent.
right. I can't do that, but we're going to be there for the sugar beet thing in October. So we're excited to do that. I want to thank Chris Kuknio, Margot Christensen, and others for your help to put that all together. And I'm also excited to go to the social, which is this Thursday evening at Guacamayas, and we're going to hear from the students that were over in Germany this past summer. So thank you for all you guys do, and it's my privilege to give this proclamation for Oktoberfest Day in the city of Prescott, September 22, 2018. Whereas the city of Prescott, Arizona, and the city of Zeitz, Germany, have enjoyed a productive sister city relationship since 2012, and whereas through reciprocal visits and cultural and educational exchanges, this long-term relationship has had a positive impact on the students and citizens of both Prescott and Zeitz. And whereas Oktoberfest, the most popular German cultural event dating back to 1810, takes place in Germany during the fall of each year, I still want to do that. Whereas in a spirit of cooperation, mutual respect, and friendship, the city of Prescott intends to honor this timeless German festival. Now, therefore, as mayor of the city of Prescott, Arizona, I do hereby proclaim September 22nd, 2018 as Oktoberfest Day in the city of Prescott.
Here. Yeah, that's right.
No, just a real quick one. And we just wanted to invite you guys out to drink beer, and it's for a good cause. Last year, this event helped 12 students and 2 chaperones make the trip last year from both Bradshaw Mountain and Prescott High School. So we're promoting peace in the community as well. The kids really do come back changed. For some, it's the centuries-old architecture. For others, the foods. But all of them come back with great stories of the people they meet and the relationships that will last a lifetime. And with today's technology, they can stay in touch forever, real time, live. Today we argue about America being great. Was it ever? Will it be again? But 3 years ago, before we ever started arguing about this, one of our kids that we sent said it best. And he said it off the cuff. He was searching for the words. And he said, you know, we live in a great country, but there's other great countries too. And when we hear that coming back from the kids, it's mission accomplished. So please come out and support this event by drinking beer. You can help make the world a little smaller. Thank you.
The next one is Museums Day, September 22nd, 2018.
You notice the mayor took the one with the beer.
Thanks, Councilman.
We are proclaiming Museums Day. So, are any other folks from museums? And we have a lot of museums around here, so we'd be full up here if everybody came. Okay, September 22nd, 2018 is going to be Museums Day. Whereas the city of Prescott is home to the Charlotte Hall Museum, Fort Whipple Museum, the Smoke-Eye Museum of American Indian Art and Culture, and the Phippen Museum of Western Art, and the soon-to-be Western Heritage Museum, that provide visitors and residents a unique blend of art, history, and culture. And whereas, through their individual missions, exhibits, and public outreach programming, these museums educate and stimulate every person that visits. And whereas, our 4 museums, soon to be 5, serve as attractions, bringing thousands of visitors to Prescott from all over the world to learn about our history, our native heritage, and our Western art and culture. Now therefore, Greg Mangarelli, Mayor of the City of Prescott, Arizona, does hereby proclaim September 22nd, 2018 as Museums Day. Would you like to say a word, Sydney? Please.
We do Museums Day every year in cooperation with the Smithsonian. The Smithsonian Institution set up Museums Day so that every person could visit any of the museums that they desire that actually participate in this program for free. And so if you know of someone in town that has not been to Smoke-Eye, has not been to Charlotte Hall, has not been to Phippen, has not been to Fort Whipple, all they have to do is go onto the Smithsonian website, register, and you get free tickets on September 22nd to go to any of the museums that are participating. I encourage you all to do that. As it states in the proclamation, we are all very different museums. We all have very different missions. We have very different collections, and we have something to teach all of you. And so I hope that you will, if you have not been to the museums recently, please come out on the 22nd or at any time. But please, please, please encourage anyone that hasn't been to a museum to do so on the 22nd. And if you don't want to go to a museum and you'd rather sit out at a lovely park in the city of Prescott on September 21st, 22nd, and 23rd, we will have Prescott Powwow at the beautiful Watson Lake Park. So thank you all. Appreciate you coming.
All right, last proclamation.
POW MIA National Recognition Day, September 21st, 2018.
Proclamation. Prisoner of War Missing in Action National Recognition Day, September 21st, 2018. Whereas in 1998, the United States Congress designated the third Friday in September of every year as POW/MIA National Recognition Day, and whereas tens of thousands of members of our nation's armed forces have endured unimaginable suffering and privation as prisoners of war, and whereas thousands of other loyal Americans served and sacrificed in the defense of liberty and freedom, but tragically never returned home, and whereas American armed forces have a long-held commitment to the vow to never leave a service member behind, and whereas our grateful nation will never forget the pain suffered by POW/MIA families to live without knowing their loved one's fate or knowledge of their final resting place. And whereas our grateful nation expresses its gratitude to American POWs and MIAs and will always reinforce the vow, you are not forgotten. Now, therefore, Greg L. Mangarelli, Mayor of the City of Prescott, do hereby proclaim September 21st, 2018 as POW/MIA National Recognition Day and encourage all citizens to plan and conduct appropriate remembrances, ceremonies, and activities. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Kathy Carl. I'm the former POW coordinator at Northern Arizona VA Healthcare Center. And as he mentioned, we have a ceremony planned for Friday next week, the 21st. We're going to start it a little earlier this year. We're going to start it at 10 o'clock. Got a little warm on us last year. We have present with us that day several of our POWs that are representing the Northern Arizona area. Unfortunately, we lost 5. Of our POWs this year, excuse me. I'm going to work hard on this on Friday, and so we're going to honor them as well. And certainly we're going to honor our MIAs. And thank you all, and hope that you can come out. It starts at 10 o'clock, and we'll have water and refreshments for you as well. Thank you.
I also want to recognize President Trump. One of the little-known achievements that President Trump was able to accomplish with his discussions with North Korea was the repatriation of some missing in action remains. So there are some families now that can finally have closure, thanks to our president. Thank you.
Let's move on to presentations.
Ernest A. Love, Prescott Grown, National Hero, Melissa Ruffner, and Michelle Stacy Schroeder.
Here.
Afternoon, Council, Mayor. Today I'm here to talk about Ernest A. Love. People in the community know the name, but not many people know the history. Way to go. Oh, the arrows. Okay. Okay. So Ernest A. Love moved to Prescott, Arizona from New Mexico at the age of 3. He attended Prescott schools. Here we have Ernest at the age of 6, dressed up as George Washington. He was also an avid Boy Scout in the community. And the picture on the lower left is him with the Boy Scouts camping in Copper Basin. He then went on to attend Washington School and Prescott High School, where he was a hometown football hero. He graduated on June 5th, 1914. Upon graduation, he left Prescott and went to Stanford University, where he was going to study engineering. And during his junior year, the United States entered World War I. So late in the summer of 1914, Europe went to war. Arizona was no longer isolated from world affairs, and Yavapai County mines felt the increased demand for copper. When America answered the call to arms and entered World War I on April 16, 1917, Prescott prepared by forming a militia unit shown here on the Yavapai County Courthouse Plaza. Anybody that has served in the military knows that military gives you a sense of brotherhood, a sense of family, brothers in arms, sisters in arms. Here's a picture of Ernest with his reserve military aviating class eating watermelon on October 2nd, 1917. Ernest is standing on the far right. He was stationed over in France as an aviator. And on the afternoon of September 15th, 1918, his plane was shot down over the skies of Verdun, France. Here's a picture of Ernest in his biplane and his helmet and his goggles, which are currently on display at the Charlotte Hall Museum in their World War I exhibit. So he was shot down on September 15th, 1918. He was captured by enemy soldiers. He was then a prisoner of war, and he was taken to a German field hospital. Sadly, he died on September 16th, 1918, the day after of his wounds. He was originally buried in a military cemetery in France, and then his family then had his body moved to Arlington National Cemetery with full military honors. We actually found a picture of his grave marker at Arlington National Cemetery. And being a veteran myself, one thing that really hit me was the inscription, "If I am to give my life for this cause, I am satisfied. There is no way I would rather go than serving my country." 2 short months later, the Armistice Treaty was signed by President Wilson. November 11th, 1918, in the 11th minute of the 11th hour on the 11th day, was then known as Armistice Day, which we now know as Veterans Day. This is a picture from 1926 of Ernest A. Love Field, which is now Prescott Regional Airport. And this is a picture of when it really was a field, and it was some distance from Prescott. There were few hangars and no controls on the landing strip. And the air shows were so popular that people from all over the state came, they drove, and they flew in for the air shows. The pictures that you saw on this slideshow and many other artifacts are currently on display at the Prescott Library Viewery. Melissa Ruffner has done a tremendous job putting these artifacts together. And the city is actually honoring Ernest A. Love at several events in September and October, ending with a dedication at the Veterans Day Parade in November. Here is a listing of some of the events. The viewery at the library will run through September 30th. We have a kickoff celebration on September 17th at Matt's Saloon at 6 p.m. with a veterans conference that's coming to town. We have a special talk by Alan Rossler, who is an author, an aviation author, who has done a book on Ernest A. Love, and he'll be talking at Embry-Riddle. October 4th, the city and the American Legion, there's a rededication at 4 o'clock for the American Legion Post, and then a party and dance following at the Holiday Courtyard at 5:30. October 6th is the air show at Prescott Airport with Embry-Riddle University. On October 19th, Prescott High School is going to have a special dedication at their home football game. Lots of little surprises coming in for that. So go out and support your Badgers and honor Ernest A. Love. And then, of course, the November 10th Veterans Day Parade in downtown Prescott. So it was my honor to come and present this little history lesson on Ernest A. Love, who was Prescott grown, but he was also a national hero. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer. And Melissa actually has a presentation that she wants to give to the airport.
I want to thank you for the honor of putting together this Ernest A. Love display at the Viewery. We are also a military family since my ancestor served with Michael Rader at Fort Pitt, which is today Pittsburgh. We have had a Ruffner in every war, or whatever they wanted to call it, up to the present. My youngest daughter, is a retired military, a Marine sergeant. Her husband is listed in the War on Terrorism. That plaque was just added to the Vietnam Memorial last year, and he was a Marine and was killed, casualty 998 in Fallujah. And her current husband is a Navy chief. She outranked him for a while, but he finally caught up. So, but I have something special to offer to the city, and I hope that this will someday be displayed at the airport. This is a May 1947 Arizona highways. The Ruffner family has stuff you wouldn't believe, and I just happened to come across this. And I wrote a little note, and basically what I said was, a gift to the city of Prescott, especially for the Ernest A. Love Prescott Regional Airport, in celebration of the life and service to our country of our hometown hero, Ernest A. Love. Thank you for allowing me to be part of this recognition to our brave aviator. All gave some gave all. This is the Prescott Airport in 1946. And the things they say about this airport will blow your mind. I mean, they were lucky they had, in fact, the tower, which they finally put up, which wasn't much of anything, was only operational a couple of hours a day. So please accept this.
Thank you so much, Melissa. Appreciate you being here today, and thank you so much for offering that to the city. We'll make sure it's taken well care of, and thank you, Councilman Shishka, for receiving that. Thank you as well, Michelle. It was a great presentation. All right. Next presentation.
Recognition of the Citizens Academy inaugural class, Mayor Pro Tem Orr and Tyler Goodman.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This afternoon, we'd like to give a special recognition to the participants who came out and supported us in our inaugural Citizens Academy class. As you can see, on the first night, we had Councilman Good and Mayor Pro Tem Orr who attended and gave a special welcome to them. We started on July 12th and just ended a couple weeks ago, August 30th. So we covered 8 weeks of material throughout the course. We also had a lot of support from the community. A lot of restaurants catered for us. Shannon's, El Gato Azul, Natural Healing Garden, Rosa's, and the fire department cooked up some mean burgers for us as well. They did a great job. Class number 2 was attended by our city manager, our city clerk, Matt Podracki from the legal department, and Mark Woodfill, our finance director. They did a great job covering their various departments and functions. Class 3, we got to visit the fire department. We went to Station 71. We learned about some history of the fire department, which is fascinating. And we also got to receive a demonstration of a cardiac arrest patient, how that happens, how it works, how many hands it takes to be on the scene to make that work. And a couple of our class participants had to help a very large firefighter to the ground. And after that, we got to see the various responses that they give, hazmat, technical response, you name it. We got to see their tools, their trucks, and everything that they had. Class number 4, we visited the airport. We went on a tour of the terminal, and then Dr. Sabata gave us a great presentation of all the opportunities that are going on at the airport, the commercial air service, all of the projects, you name it, and it was a very, very good presentation. Class number 5, we visited the transfer station and heard from Public Works and Water Resources. They have so many functions and divisions within Public Works, and it's fascinating. There were many, many questions by the class, and we stayed about 45 minutes late that night just because they wanted all of their questions answered. It was great. Class number 6, we were visited by Joe Baines and Michelle Stacy Schroeder from Rec Services. Covered special events, the trails, hiking, biking, all of those good things, as well as the library. Roger Saft and Martha Baden came and talked about all the good things going on over there. Then class number 7, we visited the police department, Chief Black, as well as some officers and lieutenants, and we got to tour the police station, got to see a lot of their vehicles and gadgets and all the fun things they have, as well as our Canine Blue. And then last but not least, we had John Heine and Ann Stewart from Communications, Economic Development, and Tourism speak to us and all of the fascinating and exciting things that are going on around the city in those realms, as well as Bryn Stotler and George Worley from Community Development, talking to us about building permits, and there were also a lot of questions on these topics. We stayed quite a bit that night too. And here is our class, the stalwart participants. I want to thank them personally for, as I've called them, the guinea pigs of this class. They have participated, asked many, many questions, and we had great dialogues. There was a lot of good feedback, and I personally enjoyed working with them. They're an excellent group, so thank you. And now I'd like to turn some time over to Mayor Pro Tem Orr.
Right. I was so excited that we started this program, and I remember going into Michael Lamar's, and so often I would go, Michael, I have an idea. Because we got this idea from Prescott Valley because they do this program. And I was talking to some of those folks at our mayor's meetings, and they were saying, we fill our class up every time. I thought, wow, why don't we do that? And of course, city manager goes, hey, Tyler. And Tyler and I went, hey, Linda Nichols, come help us with this curriculum. This is kind of what Linda does. I will tell you, I've never been so proud of our city. Every class was absolutely amazing. I'm on the city council now 3 years, and I learned a lot. So I thought it was phenomenal. And Tyler, you were terrific. Thank you. He did everything. He was there like 4 hours every night that we did this Thursday night. So Linda, thank you so much for all that you did. And I will tell you, we have another one coming up. We start October
4th.
It's full.
That class is full.
So we're going to do another one in the spring. We're hoping to do this 4 times a year, and you who went through this class, you are our best ambassadors. And so appreciate our departments, what a lot of work they put into this, and I was very proud, and am very proud of the city of Prescott, so thank you, Tyler. And we'd like to recognize our graduates. By the way, some people want to have a graduate class. They didn't want it to be over. Can we have our masters? I said, no.
Not yet.
All right, here we go. Okay. Carl DeKemper. Carl, it was great meeting you. And yes, thank you so much. Thank you for going to do a picture.
Okay.
Yep. Tyler, come on over here. Here we go. Thank you. Thank you very much. Linda Nichols. We have these really cool buttons that say 2018 Citizens Academy inaugural class. David McAtee. And very interesting because David took our class so that he could steal our ideas and take them through the county.
I was very upfront about that.
You were. From the get-go, you said, I'm just here to copy.
That's right, and the board signed off on it. So
David, it was wonderful having you.
Very much.
Thank you. Here we go.
Thank you.
James Pina. And James and Sherry were there, and Sherry is ill today, unfortunately.
Yes.
And so we will give you both of yours
Okay.
and hers.
All right, thank you.
There you go. Thank you very much. Here you go, James. Sherry Hill. Hello, Sherry. How are you? You know, I feel like I know all these people because I spent 8 weeks with them, so it's wonderful. I do know you.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Tyler,
Gave
it's
a lot to the
fantastic.
class.
Thank
Yes.
you. You made it happen.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you, Sherry.
Thank you.
Michael Getty. Michael does a lot for our city. He serves on several committees, and it was just great having him there because he brought a lot to it. So thank you so much.
Can I just say something?
Sure, please do.
I just want to take a minute to thank Michael Lamar, the council, the mayor, for allowing us to have these classes. I've had the opportunity to take all 3 citizens classes. So Chief Black, thank you for you and your staff for doing it. Chief Light, I know you're here someplace. He's not talking today. Thank you for your staff also for just wonderful insight into what we all know as citizens, what we see on the outside, what goes on in the city. But to get this opportunity to see what goes on behind the scenes was just phenomenal. So thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you, Michael. And thank you for all you do for the city. Geraldine Getty.
Tyler. And ditto what my husband said. So sign up.
Sign up, everybody. Lynn Fink. Lynn, it's good to see you. How are you? Come on up. Here we go. Thank you. Thank you. And John Fink. Good to see you, John. Come on up and we'll get a good picture. Good to
All right.
see you. Yeah.
How close you want to get?
There we go. Thank you so much.
Let me echo some words. from other
Sure,
people.
please do.
Anyone that hasn't taken this, take it. It is really good.
Well, you're the first ones to take it, so that's to all of the city.
I realize that.
Thank you. Thank you for that endorsement. Mark Stringer. How are you, Mark? Good to see you.
You too, thank you.
So you're welcome. We're going to hold this up for a picture. There we go. Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good job, you guys.
Thank
Good
you.
job.
Mary Alice Sears. Okay. Don. Oh, sorry. Is Don here? Don Sears? There you are. How are you, Don? So we'll give you Mary Alice's as well.
Okay.
Here we go.
All
Thank
right.
you. Good to
Thank
see you.
And you too. Thanks for
Thank
attending
you.
all the meetings.
Oh, absolutely. I loved it. They'll
Thanks,
have to
Tyler.
kick me out next time. Thank you. Scott Dunham. How are you, Scott? Good to see you. Like that Sun Devil shirt, by the way.
Nice shirt, very much.
Here you go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Deborah Rocha. Hi, Deb. It's good to see you.
No, I have to do it.
Absolutely. It's like class reunion. I'm sorry. Quite pretty. Thank you. You bet. You bet. Absolutely. Mary Fredrickson. How are you, Mary? Good. Good to see you.
See you.
Thank you. Thank you. Melissa Sandine.
Oh, they didn't make it?
Missy's not here? Okay.
Neither is mine.
All right. Should we hold him up and we'll send him a picture? Here we go. Imagine that you're here. Thank you.
Michelle.
Tyler, thank you. Michael, thank you so much.
Thank you for that. Before we move to consent agenda, I meant to mention earlier, this evening at 6 o'clock in Prescott Valley at their Civic Center, there is a Healing Fields service out there, and I'll be out there this evening. And I know that Chief Light was there a few nights ago for the blessing of the Healing Fields. Thanks for doing that, Chief. But it's a great service, 6 o'clock tonight out in Prescott Valley. Wanted to make sure you guys knew about that. Let's move on to consent agenda. Anything that any member would like to pull from the consent agenda? Hearing none, we'll have a motion.
Mayor, I move to approve consent agenda items 8A through 8E.
Second.
We have a motion and second. Please vote.
Passes 7-0.
Very good. Let's move on to number 9, consent ordinance.
Adopt ordinance number 2018-1626, authorizing the purchase of real property from Don M. Finger for city wastewater utility purposes and authorizing the mayor and staff to execute any and all documents to effectuate said purchase.
Hear a motion if there's no questions on that?
Mayor, I move to adopt city ordinance number 2018-1626.
Mayor,
Motion and second. Please vote.
Mayor, we have a speaker card.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. Public comment.
Next one.
Go ahead.
10A. Oh, I'm sorry.
This is 9A.
I apologize. That was my mistake.
Okay, no worries.
So who?
So we have a motion,
By whom?
I second.
Okay, thank
Shiska
you.
was- yeah.
Councilman Sischka, and a second from a couple different people. We have a motion and a second. Please vote.
Passes 7-0.
All right, we're going to move on to regular agenda item 10A. Before we do that, I want to mention if you would like to make a public comment, there are cards back here on the table. Please grab one of those, fill it out, get it up to the city clerk. You have 3 minutes to comment on one agenda item. And I will recuse myself at this point because I have a potential conflict of interest.
Item A, adoption of annexation and rezoning ordinances and development agreement and general plan resolutions for Whispering Rock.
Thank you, Maureen. You have it.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you.
There are several steps necessary to annex property into the city of Prescott, as established by both the local codes and the state statute. So we'll walk through several of those steps today, with action following at the end of the presentation. The first thing we're going to talk about is a development agreement associated with the proposed development of the property known as Whispering Rock, property belonging to Dr. Ascari. Our city attorney will go through some of the particulars of that development agreement, and we will pick up the presentation on the annexation and rezoning following that.
Mr.
Thank you,
Palladini,
George.
I'm sorry I didn't read the 2 ordinances. Can I go ahead and do that?
Please. I was going to tell you to do that.
That's what happens when you're on vacation. Adopt ordinance number 2018-1629, extending and increasing the corporate limits of the city of Prescott by annexing approximately 79.60 acres of residentially zoned land R1L-35, generally located near the intersection of Haas Boulevard and Willow Creek Road in Yavapai County, Arizona, into the city of Prescott and assigning a zoning classification thereto. Adopt ordinance number 2018-1630, amending the zoning of certain property within the city of Prescott generally located near the intersection of Haas Boulevard and Willow Creek Road from residential single-family SF-35 zoning district to business general zoning district.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem and Council. I'm going to go through sort of step 1, I guess, in this process, which is the pre-annexation development agreement, and kind of go through, not necessarily page by page, I'm happy to, but hit some of the highlights. Just so you and the audience, what we're seeing up there is what is, even though it sort of says preliminary plat, what it is, it's the site plan for the project. So it's a little hard to read, but I'll go into it in a bit in some detail. But that is really what's going to govern the development of the property. And just for the record, Dr. Ascari is here, so if there are questions for him about the development, I'm sure he'd be happy to speak. So sometimes you can't keep him away from the microphone, it seems like. But so I'm going to switch it over to the Elmo here. Hit it. All right. Okay. So, again, I'm hitting some highlights of the development agreement. And the highlights are literally highlighted, okay? So what you're seeing is the property is it's currently in the county. It's currently zoned R1L35, which is one residential unit for 35,000 square feet, so just under an acre. But I think the key in this particular provision is that the intended development of the property is mixed use, as described in the project plan, and I will get into that in a second, what the project plan actually is. There are a couple of little tweaks to this agreement. So what we will be doing as staff is when we approve the resolution, the intent, if you approve the resolution today for the development agreement, is to approve it as, I think the best way is to approve it as presented. There are a couple of little things that what was uploaded shouldn't have had in there, but just to clarify. So what we're presenting today is, this is in the recitals, it's on page 2, and it lists out those documents that the owner developer have submitted to the city at various times, and that's why there was a blank in there, because they came in at different times. So what was submitted was an application for a general plan minor amendment, which is one of the items you'll be asked to approve later today, to move the land use map from all residential to mixed use commercial. There's a application for rezoning. Again, one of the items we're looking for a vote on today. The traffic study and transportation plan, which was reviewed by the Public Works Department and approved. It's not an exhibit to the agreement, so you see that strike through. And that shows that there are certain parts of the property that will be dedicated to the city for acceleration lanes, deceleration lanes, those kinds of things, and where the intersection is going to go, where there's a traffic light, and I'll talk about that in a bit. A site plan, which is what you just saw. A development schedule, and I'll get to that in a bit. The water service agreement and a preliminary subdivision plat. The water service agreement is going to be attached to the development agreement. It wasn't attached in your packet, but it's our standard form WSA. With one exception, and I'll get to that in a bit. That's not up for approval today, nor is the preliminary subdivision plat. That gets approved late. That would get approved later on if you approve these 4 items today. The reason the water service agreement isn't up for approval today is because it's tied directly to the preliminary plat. So once the preliminary plat is finally approved, you'd be asked to approve the water service agreement, which would then allocate the water to the property.
Has that been approved already?
The which?
The water agreement?
No. Again, it's tied to the preliminary plat. So the water service, the allocation did go through the water subcommittee of the council, and the allocation at that time was recommended for approval. But because of it's been sort of, no pun intended, a fluid development, and trying to narrow down exactly how much water is needed, that sort of acre feet that the property needs is probably significantly less than what was originally presented to the water subcommittee. Okay.
I think that's the point I was trying to make, that the subcommittee looked at it.
Right.
And has moved it on to council.
Right, and a little bit of history for the rest of the council. The water committee looked at this, subcommittee looked at this, and basically weighed the public benefit and the water request, and felt that the water request was acceptable given the public benefit. Public benefit being the intended use of the property was going to be medical. Retail, hotels, lodging, a huge, and I'll get to that, a nice parcel of open space, some future uses, very limited, very limited residential use, and I'll get to that. So that was where the water issues committee came down on. Again, focusing on that topic, page 3. The intent of this agreement, one of the intents of the agreement, is to create a limited but high quality housing as part of this, but again, it's very limited. This is not intended to be a housing project. It's intended to be primarily medical use, commercial, retail, lodging. So let's get into some of the details. Okay, so as you recall, I went through all of those documents that were submitted. Those documents collectively are what makes up the project plan as the defined term. So the project plan controls the development of this project. So if there's any inconsistencies between the general plan, the land development code, and the project plan governs. And that's important to remember as we go into this in a little bit more detail. So the project plan controls the types of uses, the densities, intensities, and it governs development. So the fact that the zoning that you're going to be asked to approve post-annexation to business general in and of itself would allow for all residential uses on the property. The project plan and the site plan limit the types of uses on the project to again, a very limited number of residential uses.
Question.
Sure.
In the zoning practice and what we're doing right now with this project, does that give us the most flexibility on being able to move those different pieces of the puzzle around within that property, so it doesn't violate a final plat plan?
But when there's two things. The site plan. Can you flip this back to site plan, please? I'm sorry. If I touch it, it'll just blow up. Okay, so can we zoom in?
No.
God dang it. Okay, so it's kind of tough to see, but this site plan, the subdivision plat will look like this. Okay. But the difference being the site plan shows you what uses. Oh, here we go. Okay. Okay.
And you can zoom on that.
Okay. So let's zoom in a little bit. Okay. So, for instance, you see on a normal subdivision plat, this is a commercial subdivision plat. On a typical residential subdivision plat, it just shows residential lots, right? On a commercial subdivision plat, it doesn't show anything because they're commercial uses and they could be sort of anything that's allowed by the zoning. This site plan governs the development of the property, as this is the primary tool of how we get independent assisted living, for instance, parcel E, hospital, parcel J, parcel A, retail, parcel B, retail. If we go to the west a little bit, retail along the road there. You see the my big finger, the Hope Center here. This is the existing church here. We have this parcel here, parcel L, undecided. The development agreement says we realize that it's undecided, sort of planned at this point. And given the way the market is and the way development happens, you're not committing to any particular development. However, you can't build residential there. It has to be commercial, non-residential type development. So again, trying to limit residential development to maximize the public benefit, both in terms of sales tax, in terms of lodging, parcel C hotel, parcel C lodging, which is sorely needed out in that area. And then, right.
John,
yes.
could I ask you to point out the open space for the public
I was
so
going to
they
get to
can
that
see?
as sort of my piece de resistance on this.
Okay.
So you see 17 residential lots here. That's the maximum number. If they were to be changed, it would be 20 single-family residences or 30 multifamily. Again, the purpose of that is to have a mixed use, but to limit the number of residential uses to maximize the benefit. We want hospital, we want assisted living, we want hotel, lodging, retail to generate sales tax. And the residential uses are intended to be sort of an integral part of the project primarily for people who work out there, but certainly not limited to just folks who live out there. But that's kind of one of the intended uses of Dr. Scari.
So, John,
yes.
So I can understand this well. The reason why we don't have the water service agreement as a actual exhibit is because if this were residential, then we would know exactly how many acre feet per parcel to allocate.
Right.
But since it's mixed use and we have commercial with residential, and we don't know exactly what the water demands will be for each one of those commercial development subsections, then we know that we're going to allocate a amount of water not to exceed X,
Precisely.
whatever that is.
That's right.
But there will be enough to provide water to the likely developments within that overall plan.
Exactly right.
Okay.
Exactly right. And so as we narrow down going forward, for instance, you could probably figure out on a 7-acre hospital site, if you go up 50 feet or whatever the zoning would allow out there, how many beds that would be, what kind of facilities. You could probably do a pretty good estimate of the maximum water that hospital will use. Same with the assisted living. You could kind of figure out the densities based on the size. It may be smaller, it may be a little bigger, but you can get to that not to exceed number. Again, to reiterate that what the Water Issues Committee has recommended for approval, we believe will be significantly less based on some calculations of actual data that what does retail use, what do hotels use, rather than sort of estimates is what we've done in the past. So we're moving in that direction. Again, the housing, it sort of speaks for itself. 17 lots, you sort of do the math on those because we use data to determine that 0.17 number per household. As Mayor Pro Tem was saying, this big, unusual shaped parcel
like a
there,
swimming pool.
20 acres. Looks like a swimming pool.
Yeah.
It's actually all granite dells type rocks. That is part of the development agreement and part of the subdivision plat once it goes through will be dedicated to the city as open space. So we are acquiring dells type land in this project, which will have trails through it and all those kinds of things as part of this project at no cost to the city. So 20 more acres of open space as part of this project. If you look up here, that little notched parcel, that's the parking lot that's referenced in the development agreement. About a half acre, give or take, and that will accommodate 20 spaces, including one ADA van accessible space for the trails in there. Again, the land will be dedicated to the city, and then the city will build the parking lot appropriately. So that's the site plan. I think a critical document in the as Exhibit B site plan to the development agreement. Okay, so and I think it's also, so even though the site plan shows a limited number of housing, I wanted to point out that there's an add to the document you have. It's the underlined portion. And again, by way of agreement, notwithstanding the zoning, the business general zoning, the property is not allowed to develop more than 20 single-family homes, 30 multifamily homes. Again, I can't stress that enough. It's that this is going to be a mixed-use, medical, lodging, retail development, a huge portion of open space, a to-be-determined portion, which could be many different things, but not residential. So it's important to note. So if you look at the highlighted portions, again, we're focusing on commercial, lodging, healthcare related uses, and limited residential uses. The site plan and development schedule, I'll talk about that in a second, or what's going to sort of govern the development of the property, irrespective of that the zoning actually allows for much more. So, but for the development agreement, we wouldn't be able to get this kind of development. I think another important thing to point out is that, as you recall, the last major development agreement we did, Deep Well, created it was customized zoning. It created a whole set of rules for that development. Nothing wrong with that. This is not that. This agreement commits the development to follow the land development code, the city code, the building code, not only as it sits today, but as it's amended from time to time. So, this is following strictly city code. It's developed per city code, and if something's developed 5 years from now, and the code has changed, they've got to follow that code at that time. Okay, so very different than the nature of the Deep Well agreement. Of course, that was unique, and like I said, nothing wrong with that, but but it's important to note that the land development code governs except as to the site plan controls over the business general zoning.
Well, I'm glad to see that we have it that way, and I appreciate somebody wanting to spend their money in our community the way this is unfolding. Because I think the important part is that it's generating sales tax revenue, and at some point in time, we're going to be asked as a city to up the manpower for the fire department and the police department, and we have to have a way to pay for that. Yep. And by having this project come on board, I can see the next couple of years when Chief Black and Chief Light need to have more of a presence out there with Embry-Riddle expanding, this operation expanding, and the explanation and the expanding of Granite Dells and the other areas. It's going to be a necessity. So I'm glad to see this because this is going to help facilitate that.
Right. And I think I know that the staff has worked with Dr. Scari and his folks. We've been very excited about the prospects out there, certainly. So,
John, I'm sorry,
yes,
Councilor Lamerson has a comment.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Here again, Blair's hitting something on it. This is an example of a demographic shift in planning development. And I appreciate the fact that the medical needs of the city and the demographic changes of the city is being acknowledged to go in conjunction with the way we're acknowledging the way we're going to use a limited supply such as water.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And land for that matter. I mean, so we.
Yeah, I understand that the land is something that's important, but what's in the focus of most folks is how are we consuming our water.
Right. And so again, that's the Water Issues Committee had evaluated that and has a recommendation for you all. But again, just to be clear, no water service agreement up for approval today, no subdivision plat. That's to come. We talked earlier about the development schedule, and this is what the development schedule is. So we're setting aside water. That determination is not to exceed, as Councilman Good referenced, is determined at some point in the future. And the difference for this is rather than commit whatever that water or whatever those acre feet are indefinitely, we give the developer or the owner a development schedule. And this was a negotiated number based on some needs. We actually started a little lower, 90 months, 7.5 years. So to the extent that development isn't built out in that 90-month period, the water doesn't go away automatically, but it does give the city the right to reclaim the unused water. So if the development stalls, then the discussion is made, is had with the owner, the developer at the time, where's this going? Because we can't hold this water up. There may be other necessary uses or uses that need the water that we're committed to this. So it doesn't automatically go away, but it gives the city the ability to reclaim it at some point. Obviously, it would have to be done in a public meeting and throughout the proper process. So that's the development schedule. So you're looking at a 7.5 year build out is the intent with that development schedule. Okay, a couple of other things I think are pretty significant is the developer's going to, the Haas Road, Haas Boulevard, Willow Creek Road intersection, developer's going to basically rebuild that. The owner's going to rebuild that intersection to put a 4-way traffic light in. But because not all of the need for the traffic light is this development, the city's going to contribute $200,000 to that light. So that's what this proposes. The trailhead parking lot, that was an insert in your form. It says it's blank. It's about a ½ acre, but ultimately it will be determined based on the final. It's roughly a ½ acre, give or take, and that's to fit the 20 spaces in that little notch.
What's the estimated cost for that intersection?
The overall cost? About 500. 500. Yeah. Well, I think that's just the traffic signal. I think there's some other work that has to be done on acceleration, deceleration lanes. So city's contribution is limited to $200,000, primarily for the traffic signal cost to offset some of that. The paragraph 10 I kind of talked about, that's on the final plat, that's the dedication of the 20 acres of open space. And by the way, that open space, even though it's dedicated to the city, the owner developer does get credit for that against open space requirements, right? I mean, obviously that's the only fair way to do that. So a couple other things, these are kind of standard, but to the extent there are specialty features or materials that get installed, including landscaping, that becomes a owner cost. The city doesn't incur cost of maintenance upkeep, similar to Prescott Lakes. We have a similar agreement where if you put in specialty signage, specialty crosswalks, landscaping, irrigation, that becomes an owner that stays an owner responsibility to not only build it, but to then to maintain it and replace it, where the cost is above and beyond what the city would normally pay. Owner's going to develop.
I had a
Yes,
question
sir.
here on the landscaping section. I notice it says in here that the landscaping must be low water use. That's a rather vague, undefined term, and it can be really anybody can decide themselves what low water use is, unless it's connected to our current plant palette, where we have specific species designated as low water use.
It is. So remember, if we go back and say that the land development controls,
Right.
the plant palette is part of our land development code. It's also part, when you see the water service agreement, the water service agreement references that particular thing. So again, unlike Deep Well, where they had sort of a different take on things, this except we're expressly stated where the agreement controls, which is primarily the site plan, the allowed uses, the development follows all of the normal rules. So as, let's say, for instance, the plant palette changes in a few years, that as amended language would then obligate any new plants go in, would follow that new, maybe more low water use plant palette. So it's land development code and the water service agreement bind the development to the city's current or future plant palettes.
Great, that's good.
Okay. Public improvements of off-site utilities. We're going to, again, sort of partner, because there's some upsizing that can happen, that needs to happen out there. So we're going to partner with developer to reimburse for the cost of upsizing existing water main to the property. Because again, that's not just going to serve the property, it's going to serve the broader area out there. So there's a partnership partnering there. I wanted to point this out. I think there was a question raised in section 20. This probably should have been titled development, the order of development, rather than timing. Remember, we talked about timing 90 months. This is in what order can the development happen. Sometimes cities will say, hey, we want you to build at least 50% non-residential before we let you put the housing in or the residential in. We're not doing that here because we're trying to have some flexibility with it. We suspect that by the type of housing and the purpose of the housing, that it won't happen first. It'll probably happen somewhere down the road. But we wanted to have some flexibility, or allow the development some flexibility to determine what order things get built. Do they, again, do we want to have the hospital first and then retail? Well, a lot of it's going to take, it's going to depend on the market, the timing, decision making. But if the hospital and the assisted living go in first, that will certainly trigger retail, lodging, and those kinds of things to happen. But again, there's no, what this proposes, there's no particular order that has to happen.
Thank you. Councilman Good?
Yeah, I think that's particularly important to note when we have healthcare facilities going into this development. There's many credentialing and accreditation requirements that have their own long-term timelines to be able to achieve and have approval before construction could begin or get completed, and then occupancy and operation requirements as well. So I think the public needs to understand that in this particular development, that type of flexibility is really important.
Agree, and we took that into consideration. I'll go back to the site plan real quickly. Obviously, if you look at the retail pads along Willow Creek Road, I mean, that may, that's the idea there again, is most likely restaurants, food service type places. Well, you've got a whole bunch of hungry students living across the street, and those don't take as long. I think the acknowledgement of Councilman Good is they don't take as long to go through permitting and approval and building. And you may have those go in well before you can get the deals done with the hospital companies and then going through all the processes. And so rather than try and hold it up kind of artificially, that's what we're trying to do here is say, hey, whatever the order of the development is, you got your 90 months, make it happen, but we're not going to control it down to that level of detail. And this goes back to, this is some, if there's some oversizing that we require, that the project, yes?
Yes, Councilman Lamberson.
Okay.
Yeah, John, again, exempling, going along with Councilman Good's comments here, one of the ideas that we've been formulating over the last several months, years, whatever, is for these parcels that will have a direct impact on the city, within the city, is for the city to annex properties and have influence with regards to how the property will be developed in the best interests of the entire community, not just the property owner, but as part of the city. So that's part of what we're going through right here, is we're modeling not only for this particular one, but for in the future, as to how we proceed with regards to development agreements, et cetera, for development, what's in the interest of the city. And I'm appreciative of Ascari for bringing a project and having the flexibility to discuss with us what do we really need as a community and how can we best use the property that we would choose to bring into the city. And I think this was a good opportunity for the city.
I agree.
So this section just talks about, again, sort of reiterates that if we do require oversizing, that the city reimburses the developer, because there are opportunities to do some oversizing out there, according to the Public Works folks, and obviously it makes absolute sense, the economy of scale, to do it at the time they're being built in the first place, or being built up or being sized up in the first place to go even bigger if that's what is deemed to be necessary. This also talks about what Councilman Good was talking about earlier, that going forward, landscaping becomes a responsibility of the owner. Irrigation systems, planting, right-of-way maintenance, all that. That's all essentially would be the property owner association, ultimately similar to what a homeowner association would have to do out there, would maintain that. So again, no ongoing extra maintenance costs for the city. And obviously all these, just by way of, I may have skipped over it, all of the infrastructure is going to be public infrastructure, so public streets, public water, public sewer, all built to our GES, our General Engineering Standards. No exceptions to those. Again, a little bit different than what we did in the past with the prior development agreements. All built to our regular standard. So, in terms of, and so that helps, I think, with long-term, keeps down long-term maintenance costs, because if it's built to current standards or then in effect standards, that was the intent of the GES. Last but not least, I wanted just to show this part. This is a little legalistic, but this development agreement, if approved, gets recorded against the property and it runs with the land. So as subsequent owners come in, or a new developer or developers buy a couple of parcels, it binds those developers to those parcels. It also binds a future property owner association. It runs basically forever in terms of those obligations on the property. As the property, as things happen, for instance, the first part of this talks about annexation. If the annexation happens and the 30 days runs, that part sort of becomes moot just because the annexation is done. Same with the rezoning. Same with the water. If the property is done development and is built out in the 90 months, that part becomes moot. But the agreement, primarily obligations on the developer or on the owners downstream, remain in effect forever. So the city never has to take back maintenance obligations, or there's no time frame. And that's why you don't see a sort of term limit for this agreement, because we don't want those types of agreements where 20 years, 30 years down the road, all of a sudden it becomes a city obligation. So that was the intent of that. And so again, you didn't see Exhibit A as part of your packet. I'll show it to you now. It's 3 pages long, and it looks like this. This is your legal
John, I
description.
just wanted to
That's
make
the reason we didn't include it.
I wanted to make one comment, because when I was reading the packet, it did reference the term of this agreement. And that was my concern, that it wasn't specified in the agreement what the term was. But you and I discussed that the agreement term really runs with the property.
Correct.
In essence, perpetuity.
Correct.
So I just want to make sure that if anybody else read that, they understood the same.
That's correct.
Definition of the term.
Right. So this is your Exhibit A. It's your legal description. It's 3 pages. You'll see this on the annexation ordinance. You'll see it on the rezoning ordinance. It's the same legal, repeated over and over again. And this is, so the reason it wasn't included is like oftentimes these surveys are tweaked, and it just wasn't available until kind of the last minute. Exhibit C, like I said, is the water service agreement. You'll see that. It will go through the normal process. And this is your Exhibit B. Again, I can't stress enough that if this is approved and goes through, this is the development you can expect by way of these approvals that we're going to get this. Now, is there some flexibility? Certainly. It says retail. That gives you a lot of flexibility. It says hospital. That gives you some level of flexibility. Hotel, certainly. And I think retail, if it's decided where hotel says hotel, and retail, they want to put another lodging in. Sure. There's some flexibility to it. But again, emphasize very limited housing for a very limited purpose. So I have nothing further to present, subject to your questions.
Thank you, John. Nicely done. We appreciate it. Questions, comments?
I'm thinking.
Okay.
I'm thinking of Suds and Duds laundromat and a bar on that corner.
Sounds good. Sounds good, Councilman. Councilman Good.
Well, when I first saw this packet, and my concern was not only for myself, but for the public in general, who pulled the detail on this agreement, and I just found so many blanks. The exhibits were not included, and my experience with contracts, which is pretty extensive, is I don't ever sign a contract that has blanks in it to be filled in later. But I had about 8 different concerns, one of which the beginning was that there was no effective date on the packet itself. But understanding that we need a 30-day period from the time the council agrees to it for that to expire, and then that becomes the effective date.
Correct.
That would be subject to the council's decision tonight.
Correct.
So there's justification in not having that date in there until we agree. And then mentioning the exhibits, I still think that we should have had that legal property description included. There's no reason why that couldn't have been there. But since it's been displayed here and will be included in the minutes, and that will be subject to inclusion for this property agreement, that should be legally binding.
Correct.
The site plan also, that same plan could have been included in the packet, just with the stipulation that the flexibility required needed to be clarified. And then lastly, the Section C, the water service agreement, we could have had something in there that also specified not to exceed, so that the public in general would understand that these weren't intentionally left blank. There were good reasons for them to be designed or agreed upon during the course of the planned area development agreement. I also noticed that the reference to the parking lot was also a set acreage, but it was blank. But now we know it's approximately a half an acre, and it will accommodate 20 vehicles plus a disabled parking.
And I think, sorry to interrupt, that's what's the critical number is we wanted 20 spaces. So a little bit depends on the topography and location. That is, you saw that little notch on the exhibit, that is roughly a half acre and should fit. We've sort of, our Public Works and Park people figure that's about 20, that should be sufficient for 20 spaces.
Right. So I think that's acceptable. My comments about the low water use, I think, have been sufficiently answered. And with the understanding of the term of the agreement really runs with the property itself, those were my primary concerns. So I think they've been sufficiently addressed. And at this point, I can support approving this.
Any other comments from council?
Turn it over to George Worley then.
Oh, okay. Thank you. We're not done yet. Nicely done. Thank you, John. Yes, George.
Thank you. I'm just going to step through a couple of more parts of the process just so it's clear why you're doing the 4 steps you'll be doing a little bit later and taking action later. The annexation brings in about 80 acres. The number varies just slightly depending on whether it's the one associated with the rezoning or whether it's the one associated with the annexation itself. Most of the land is undeveloped. There are a few structures on the property. Those structures will, some of them will remain, others will be removed as part of the future development of the property. As mentioned by Mr. Palladini, the current zoning is R1L 35 in the county. That's a single-family residential zoning, and that will be addressed as part of the rezoning, and I'll mention that in just a moment. Arizona has a prescriptive process for annexing property. One of the required steps is to file a blank petition and await 30 days to expire before actually submitting a signed petition. That 30-day period has expired. We've completed that part of the process as required. The signed petition was received from the applicant, so again, that step was completed. And with that, all required Arizona revised statutes and our Prescott Land Development Code requirements have been met for the annexation. The area involves a general plan amendment. This gives you an idea of generally where the property is located and what the designations are. The yellow to the right-hand side is a residential designation. The sort of pink color to the left-hand side is the commercial designation, which is the intended future designation of all of the property. There is a potential for the city to redesignate the open space area as well as rezone that area at some point in the future to make it open space, to allow us to keep it in perpetuity as open space as defined on the proposed plat. The general plan amendment is necessary, again, just to make those minor modifications, but it also sets the stage for the boundaries for the changes that will occur with the rezoning. One important piece of this, and it was mentioned previously by the city attorney, the ground outcrops that are so obvious from the street are part of that area to be designated to the city. They are to be made part of the open space of the residential the commercial development of the subdivision. And the residential uses that were shown, I'm going to have to jump back just a little bit, on that property are specifically placed up against that open space area. So you have something that is of a smaller scale, doesn't hide all the granite rocks there with a larger building. I thought that was a great idea proposed by Dr. Ascari. It certainly leaves those granite rocks accessible and visible to the public as part of this process. So that was a very good thing he did. The rezoning, again, follows the general process. All of the property is proposed to be rezoned to commercial, our business general designation, as part of the step you're about to take. But a future date, if the city chooses to rezone that open space area to an open space or a conservation designation, we can do that. So today's actions actually incorporate 4 steps. Their adoption of the ordinance approving the development agreement, an ordinance annexing the property into the city, a resolution amending that general plan land use map, and then another ordinance that would rezone the property to the current intended business general zoning. Also mentioned by the city attorney, the 2 ordinances have a 30-day period before they become effective. During that 30-day period, the staff is already working on and will continue to work on the subdivision plat getting that to a point where we can bring that before you, and potentially could bring that before you in 30 days. Action on the plat and action on the water service agreement take effect immediately after council votes on them, effectively with a 30-day period, and potentially bringing those to you 30 days from now. All of the process could occur and be completed and effective roughly at the same time. Again, future action will be the subdivision plat and the water service agreement. If you have any questions about any of those steps, I'm open
Thank
to
you,
answer
George.
those.
Any other comments before we go to the public? Any more comments from the council? Well, I would just like to say two things. Last time we had opened the hearing, we had a letter from Dr. Ascari. I'm sorry, a letter from Dr. Ayers at Embry-Riddle, just saying thank you for this project. Be a great thing for Embry-Riddle. Also, we've talked a lot about medical tourism and how this project may actually feed into that. And Dr. Ascari, I just want to thank you for those 20 acres that you're setting aside for the city. It's a beautiful area, so thank you. Thank you for your generosity. Appreciate it. Any comments from the public?
I have one, Daniel Matson.
Daniel?
Hello, my name is Daniel Matson. One of the things I do when I help a lot of people is provide transportation to and from Thumb Butte Medical, Dr. Ascari's medical office. And I've been doing that for years. They originally had this place down in the crossings that was not custom built for them. They made the best use they could. They provided a lot of good service. Some of the people that I brought there, I had medical power of attorney on, and therefore got to see very closely the work he did. You could tell he very much cared. He built this new Thumb Butte Medical, which is just beautiful. It's very well built. It's a beautiful design. If this development he's building is half as good as that, we're in for a real treat. I'm looking forward to the increase in services that he's going to provide. I think this is a wonderful thing for the city. I definitely think bringing that area into the city limits is a wonderful thing. We don't need a county island there. I see nothing but good from this. So I totally, and anybody in the city who wonders about what we can expect from this, go look at the Thumb Butte Medical Building. It is a beautiful building.
Thank you, Daniel.
I
And
even know his dogs. I've known him for that long. So
I think you're right. We are in for a real treat. Thank you very much. All right, can we move ahead to voting? John, are we good with that? So can I please have a motion?
Mayor Pro Tem, move to adopt resolution number 2018-1653, approving a development agreement.
Second.
And can everyone please vote?
Passes 6-0.
Thank you.
You want me to read them all, or you want everybody?
Sure, go right ahead.
Adopt ordinance number 2018-1629, annexing the Whispering Rock property.
Second.
Thank you, and please vote.
Passes 6-0.
Number 3, adopt resolution number 2018-1654, amending the general plan land use map.
Second.
Please vote.
Passes 6-0.
And finally,
And number 4, adopt ordinance number 2018-1630, amending the zoning to business general.
Second.
and everyone vote. Thank you.
Passes 6-0.
Congratulations. Thank you very much. Of course you can, Dr. Ascari. Come on up. Why don't you take the microphone, please, so we can all hear you.
Not giving me a gift. I'm not coming there. I could use it. I don't want my bag to be to you, so I'll come over. Okay. 9/11 has been an emotional day for me since I became an American citizen, and I'm honored to be here. But talking about my generosity to 20 acres is nothing to the generosity of my father. I was the last baby of the family. 2 of them were medical school, 2 of them were living their life. And he told me at age 27, you're a businessman, you're successful. You go become a doctor like your brothers and help people. You don't need money. Don't listen to your mother because your mother loves you more than anything, and you would stay here and you would not achieve to help people. That man has generosity to leave his last baby to go to today, 24/7 years, take me from 3 continents to be in beautiful Prescott and serve the community. I love you, Dad. And I love you all, and thank you for your support.
Thank you, Dr. Ascari. Welcome back, Mayor.
Yes, thank you. Let's move on to item 9B, please. Or 10B, I should say.
Approve authorization of services number 1 and payment not to exceed $249,672.33 to Dibble Engineering for new terminal schematic design for Prescott Regional Airport.
How do I go up and down?
Hey, Dr. Sabata, good to see you. You look very rested.
I think we should all take a cruise.
Oh, that's true. Well, actually, at 6 o'clock this morning, I was on a cruise ship in the Pacific, and at 8 o'clock, I was at Los Angeles International Airport.
Nice.
At 11 o'clock, I was at Denver, connecting through to Prescott, and 29 folks were on board the aircraft coming back to Prescott.
That's good.
Yay.
Yes, we have great air service thanks to United Express, operated by SkyWest Airlines, and the load factors are more than anybody could have expected.
It's wonderful.
We have load factors in our first week of 70% revenue passengers, including non-rev 76% load factors. According to the airline, those are unheard of. This is the biggest launch in the history of essential air service. Yes, we knew we could do it, didn't we? Thank you, Council. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, City Manager Lamar. This was great leadership on your part, and here we are with kind of a good and bad problem, and that is the terminal isn't big enough.
That's a good problem.
That's a good problem. As the council is aware, you did allocate $150,000 for renovations in the old terminal. As of this morning, we only spent $68,000 of that, and I think we had a good launch with that. We're trying to be frugal. But as we look forward, we know the terminal does need to be replaced. There's serious problems with the existing terminal, including the lack of passenger queuing space, lack of airline operating space, lack of security processing space, which means we can't even integrate in the newest security technology, lack of landside facilities, lack of baggage claim processing area, and antiquated or undersized utilities. Not to mention the fact that, as you can see, what we call the TSA processing wing, which is the southern part of the terminal. If I could go ahead and point, I don't know if I can point to this without giving you guys, but right here, this particular facility actually penetrates 2 and soon to be 3 what we call imaginary surfaces or protected surfaces for airspace and airport property. So we have safety issues and we have security issues that we really want to take into consideration. So as we move forward, we are looking at using the services of Dibble, which is our on-call engineering firm. Dibble Engineering is actually represented here today by Ken Snyder in teaming with DWL, Sandra Kukla. And actually, there is a 15.6% local participation, which is more than was in the City Council agenda. That includes Michael Taylor and a grand total of 4 local firms that are actually teaming with this group and going to help us with the design of this new terminal. What's really exciting is the experience that we have in this room is extraordinary. DWL has completed 70 airport vertical projects in just the past 5 years, including $560 million for the Terminal 3 renovation project at Sky Harbor International Airport, and another $20 million at Tucson International Airport for the reworking of their security area. So this kind of experience is extraordinary to have, helping us to develop this really unique space. I have a schedule here of the preliminary design schedule. What we're looking at is we're going into a phased approach. Starting tomorrow, if the council and mayor approve, we'll be moving into our notice to proceed for 30% design. By December, we will be submitting that 30% design to the FAA for review, as you can see right here. And also, it will come back to council at that time period for your approval prior to being submitted to this. There will be a series of visioning and outreach sessions with stakeholders occurring in September, October, and November. We'll be making a decision on the procurement method. Is it going to be, CM at risk, or will it be design, bid, build? So there will be a briefing there for council to make a decision on moving forward. You can see that getting to 30% design is an important milestone. We'll actually be getting to schematics, so you will actually have something to look at. The firms will be creating minimum of 3 different proposals on how to use the space. Now, this builds on some history that we've had. This particular location was selected following a siting study that was done in 2015, and then a sizing study that was done earlier this year. There was originally some envisionment of a 10,000 square foot terminal. It was this original space here, but after some additional calculations and discussions with federal and state authorities, it was best, we felt, to go with approximately a little bit more there. So the final, well, at this point, what we're looking at is approximately 16,608 square feet. Now, this is the first phase of this terminal, and eventually, when we look at a long-term proposal, it'll be approximately 33,000 square feet in its full build-out. This particular design will not take that to a construction document level. It'll just take that into account so we don't do anything now that would jeopardize our ability to expand in the future. So we will be doing the planning for the short-term facility. We'll be coming back to City Council to discuss that further. We will achieve this for approximately $249,672.33. Because that only takes us to 30% design, that doesn't mean we're going to triple that amount. The actual cost of the final design is looking at about $550,000. That's about $100,000 more than we originally budgeted, so we are downsizing our hangar relocation project and taking the $100,000 from that. So we will be getting our T-shade project out of it. This is one of the proposed areas over here for the new T-shades. Another one is in the bottleneck areas, which is located off the map. We will be displacing some tenants that are underneath the T-shades here and in the hangars here. This is called the A row of hangars, and this is 10 T-shades, so they will get relocated to other areas of the airport. So we don't anticipate any unexpected displacement. It's all going to be accommodated. This is actually a pretty aggressive or tight schedule. The reason that we're moving so quickly on this is that our target is to get to this point, which is, you'll notice 9/18/2019, we're hoping to secure the FAA funding and a construction notice to proceed. Congress passed some legislation earlier this year, and included in that legislation was $1 billion a year for 2 years for small and rural airport funding. We are going to be applying for that funding through the FAA. The final application date on that is October 31st. So we're preparing that proposal right now. What we've found out in our discussions with the FAA is that not a lot of airports are shovel ready and able to take advantage of those funds. And so this schedule would permit us to be in the fiscal year 19 federal budget to be able to take advantage of those funds. And we've had communications with state and federal officials about this. This has been programmed into our ACIP, which is our Airport Capital Improvement Program, with their coaching. While they can't guarantee the funds, of course, we go through the normal application and review process. We feel very, very positive about the support we've received from the federal government on moving forward. So we think this is an exciting time to address some of those deficiencies with a new terminal building. I think many of you have been on the council for years, if not decades, and heard about a new terminal. I think it's time we design and build one.
Yeah.
Thank you, Robin. Questions, comments from the council?
I have noticed that several of my patients, they're moving from California, and then they have a plane. They were asking if there is a possibility they could have more hangars rather than they park.
So, Dr. Scar, I'm sorry. Let's do questions and comments here, and then if you want to do a public comment, we'll do that, okay?
I'm sorry.
That's okay. Councilman Good?
I just want to make the point that these design costs are subject to reimbursement by the FAA. So I've talked to a couple people that were thinking that we're just spending a bunch of money willy-nilly here. No, it's really well focused, and our ability to keep the actual expenditures are going to be very well controlled, and having the FAA pay the bulk, if not especially in the design, almost the complete design cost, is going to be very beneficial for the city, and is not going to negatively impact our budget.
Yes, these costs are eligible for reimbursement from the FAA at the time of the construction.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes, and thank you, Robin. Good job. And also, of course, this has all been budgeted. It's in our fiscal year 19 budget. I'd also like to say that there will be public input that we will get on the terminal. We're going to put together some individuals, and so it's not going to be Billy and Robin doing this.
No, actually, the stakeholder workshops
That's
are
right.
very, very helpful.
Yes.
The consulting team will be putting together some visions and designs, and then they bring in that expertise on what can work functionally, and then we bring the spirit of the community in.
right.
I mean, this is Prescott Regional Airport, Ernest A. Love Field, and it needs to say Prescott because this will be the first point that people experience or this first opportunity to be coming into this community. And so we want that. We want the public to give that input.
So thank you for that clarification.
Thank you.
Councilman Sischka.
Yeah, congratulations, Robin. That's quite an accomplishment. How many parking spaces do we have now?
In the main terminal area in front, we're at about 140 parking spaces, plus the ability to shuttle to another 106 spaces.
Okay,
We
how-
actually added an additional 34 spaces over the Labor Day weekend. We were busy.
Wow.
See the suntan from being out of
Busy lady, yeah.
yeah, and so we did also add this week an extra ADA accessible space.
Okay, and how many in the brand-new parking lot?
Well, that's going to be left to design.
Okay.
They will be calculating that number. We want to make sure that there's plenty of parking, and we hope that it maintains as free parking.
Have you done a study on how much, if in fact things were 70% full on a consistent basis, how many parking spaces would be required or needed?
That's a really good question, and I had asked the consultants earlier if they could, or the airline, if they could give me some sort of algorithm to determine that. But there was no formula. What we had to do is we had to look at the local population and what their patterns were. So literally, we were doing parking lot checks about every 3 to 4 hours, and we were tracking them relative to the numbers on the flights to get a good balance. And once we actually added those 34 spots, we never went to full. So we're good there, and as we move forward, I believe that that's going to be an important part of our planning, is both the land side and the air side facilities.
Excellent, thank you.
Councilman Blair.
I can assure you I've been waiting a long time for this. I think I did a popsicle structure and art class in high school of the new terminal, so it's been a while.
I think we have that under glass at the terminal.
Yes, under glass. So thank you very much, because the 16 years that I've been here, my number one item on my list every single year after water has been the aggressive approach to our airport that never seemed to take flight. But with you at the helm and Mr. Mangarelli, Lamar, whoever's been involved, the working group, it seems that maybe I can actually wreck my little building and see a new one.
It's good to hear.
Councilman Lamerson.
Thank you very much. Robin, thank you. You mentioned in your early part of your presentation the potential for expansion of the terminal. The concept that maybe someday, maybe not too far off in the distant future, we may need to expand the terminal a little bit. And I do think we've taken that somewhat into consideration with growth ideas out in that area with annexations, et cetera. So I'm sure that at some point the thought process is sort of universal with regards to council versus airport personnel, et cetera, that at some point we will need to have some growth at the airport to keep a solid and solvent service being provided. Would you like to respond to that at all?
Sure. I think one of the important things that you're bringing up is that it's a team effort, and the airline also is part of this team, working together with the city and saying, what is the future? So they'll be part of our terminal visioning committee, because they've already come to us and said, we see that there's growth in the community. We'd like to keep up with that growth. They want to program their flight operations with our growth. So, and I think it's not just obviously the city of Prescott, but it's the entire region That's why we renamed it Prescott Regional Airport, Ernest A. Love Field, is because there are regional growth patterns that we need to track and make sure that we respond to in this design.
And I think it's important because that's what DC recognizes, is it's regional, not municipal. And I think that's an important issue to keep focused on.
Yes, it is.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Robin, so phase one is about 16,000 square feet, did you say?
Yeah, phase one of the terminal is actually it's estimated to be 16,806 square feet. That's an estimate. It could go up or down a little bit. We've already received the categorical exclusion environmentally from the FAA, so we're good to go environmentally on this facility up to 17,000 square feet.
Yeah, that's good. Can you give us some perspective on the square footage of the existing terminal compared to the 16,000?
Well, here, I'll
I know
take
it's
this out.
kind of hodgepodge.
Okay.
And
So the main part right here, what we call the current structure, is about 4,400 square feet. There was an extension out here, which is the TSA office area. Then there was also an extension off the front for an ADA accessible bathroom. This is actually on railroad ties. This was supposed to be temporary in 2006. And this TSA wing, so all together, the entire terminal complex under roof is approximately 10,000 square feet, but it's really awkward the way that it's laid out. We cannot expand without even considering sprinkler systems, and even if we did expand, there's 4 or 5 of those airspace areas which really are safety issues that need to be addressed. Once we lop off this piece right here, hang on, let me see. I don't know if you can see it because this laser pointer isn't working there. This will come off, and then probably we'll go down to the original footprint. And with the help of the Friends of the Airport, we're looking at an effective reuse for the existing terminal that would be historically appropriate. And I think there's some real excitement about reusing the main part that would be outside of many of those surfaces we're worried about penetrating.
yeah, I appreciate you mentioned that. Friends of the Airport's going to help us with the historical aspect of that and maintaining that moving forward, which we appreciate. The square footage, it sounds like you're more or less doubling. I know it's not really usable right now or efficient, what we have, but you're essentially going to double in phase one what really we have now, more or less. What number of gates are you thinking about? And I'm assuming we're still walking out and going up the ramp, even with the new terminal?
Well, that's a good question. You can see depicted on the map up here, we actually have 2 gate positions for regional jets. Those could actually, what's envisioned there are actually Embraer 170, 175, which would be around 76 seats, 70 to 76 seat aircraft. We believe that if you actually were not put them in parallel, but if you were to put them in perpendicular, you could get an additional gate space out of that area. We'll see through design what's the best use of that space. But ultimately, yeah, we could have 3 gate positions there. If you were to make an L shape up at the top, which is one of the designs from yesteryear that I saw, there's actually a design that shows it turning the corner here. I thought maybe it could be curvilinear, but I've been told by the consultant that's more money. So we always have to consider the cost of everything, and costs can go up. So we want to be reasonable here. If that were to be the case, then some of this area here would have to be relocated. And if I may answer Dr. Ascari's question, yes, we do have some long-term plans for development of additional space on the airport for not only additional T-shades, but also for additional hangar space as we move into the future.
Great. And so you said 3 gates more or less with phase one then? Is that what you're thinking?
Safely 2, as you can see up there, but the possibility of being able to expand to 3 without additional physical building infrastructure.
Yeah. Very good. Any other questions or comments from the council? Public comment?
Sandra Smith?
Good afternoon, Mayor, Council. This may seem kind of off the wall or out of place at the moment, but since they're just starting to design, how about we design it right? I can get up and walk into a bathroom or a stall if I have to. The only place in town I found that is actually wheelchair accessible for a stall is the women's library stalls. The library stalls over here. You can actually get in there and transfer from the chair to John without having to do all kinds of gymnastics. So if they could look at those and design their stalls that way, that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Would you like me?
No, we're good. Any other public comment? Yes. We'll let you come to the podium, please, and then we'll have you fill out a form. I think we know who you are, but there you go. No worries.
I would love to see it to go as big as large as you can, and then maybe a possibility of a flight once a month to San Francisco, John Wayne Airport, Las Vegas. I see a lot of my patients who came from California and different places. John Wayne Airport would be a great destination to help people not to drive to 405. It's disaster over there. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment?
No, Mayor.
Okay. Entertain a motion at this point.
Mayor, I move to approve authorization of services number 01 and payment not to exceed $249,672.33 to Dibble Engineering pursuant to City of Prescott contract number 2019-069 for new terminal schematic, 30% design for Prescott Regional Airport.
Second. Motion and second. Please vote.
Passes 7-0.
All right. Finally, that's good. Yeah. Taking action. I appreciate that. Let's go on to item 10C, please.
Review and approval of city contract with Prescott Chamber of Commerce for the state of Arizona's official visitor center.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Ann Stewart with the Tourism Office. The item before you on the agenda has to do with the proposal for the Prescott Chamber of Commerce and the official visitor center. Give a second. The Prescott Chamber of Commerce came to the Tourism Office with a sponsorship proposal designed to support the official visitor center. The proposal was presented to the Tourism Advisory Committee, TAC, on August 16, 2018. The TAC voted in favor of the recommendation to the City Council that they approve the sponsorship. The center is designated by the state of Arizona as the official visitor center and to date receives 30,000 visits per year. Presently funded by membership and sponsorship, it costs a little over $50,000 a year to operate the visitor center. By selling maps and other miscellaneous items, the visitor center raises about $22,000 a year. There are about 35 volunteers that manage the center 7 days a week. The additional funding will be used to keep a steady flow of funding and do minor repairs to keep the center in decent condition. The Chamber is requesting help and support to enhance the tourism experience. There is funding available through the transient occupancy bed tax. And there is a representative here today from the Chamber of Commerce Board, Andre Carmen, who will answer any questions and discuss this further with you.
Okay, thank you, Annie. Any questions or comments from the council?
I would ask a question. Andre, having been involved with the chamber for many years, but having now not been as involved as I was before, do you have an idea of the amount of hours your volunteers over at the Chamber of Commerce put forward to the citizens of Prescott with regards to promoting our tourism? I know at one time it was literally in the thousands of hours that our volunteers and the paid staff of the Chamber of Commerce were doing at no cost to the city of Prescott, but out of love for the city of Prescott.
I don't have that answer. Have a guess?
Over 10,000 hours per year.
And when you figure 10,000 hours, even at minimum wage being what it is in the state of Arizona, that is a contribution that is very difficult not to appreciate.
I would agree with you.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Andre, did you want to speak first?
I can. You're in charge, so whatever you want to do.
Well, no, I just wanted to make the comment. I totally agree with Councilman Lemerson, and that is when the $20,000 came forward to TAC, I'm the liaison for Tourism Advisory Committee. several of us encouraged them to a little bit more, because we know we could never begin to do what you do for $25,000 a year. And this is a real partnership between the Chamber and the city and our official tourism. And you do an amazing job, and we are here to help you guys. So thank you.
Councilman Good?
Yeah, I was just curious to find out if you're, and I'm sure you are, tracking your tourist encounters and what kind of trends you're seeing over the last couple of years and what we can likely project from those trends in the near future.
I have some answers for that question. Sherry Heine, the president and CEO of the Chamber, would have better information. But just this year to date, the Chamber has had 11,000 phone calls from January 1 to August 31, 18,000 walk-ins year to date. That's before our busy holiday season comes up. You know, with the Christmas season being Arizona's Christmas city, we have a lot of visitors here. So that's about 30,000 encounters with tourists that the Chamber Visitor Center has handled. And included in that number is 47 international guests from Canada, the UK, Australia, Belgium, France, and Germany.
And that's year-to-date numbers?
That's year-to-date through August 31.
Okay, and how about last year?
Roughly in the same. Right now, we're tracking a little bit higher with visitor.
Sherry, go ahead and come on up, please. Thank you. Just so we can hear you.
So last year we were right around the same number, or actually right now we're ahead of last year for numbers. And what we're seeing as a trend is we're getting more involved with the visitors or with the tourism office to bring in more sales. So we're actively going after even more sales. So we hope to see these numbers even double in the next few years, in the next 3 years as far as trends go. So that's really what we're looking at. But to answer your question in another way, we are seeing a lot more international travelers as well. And that was represented, right now we have 392. Last year we had 21.
Wow.
That's
impressive.
For the month, yeah. So we're seeing a huge jump in the international travel, and that's probably partnering with AOT. I know we've been going to all their conferences and being very involved with them.
Right.
And that I would like to comment that the Visitor Center does share a monthly report with the tourism office on the number of phone calls, walk-ins, domestic and international visitors. We get it monthly from them.
So we can expect this additional funding not only to keep you going and keep you in supplies and good condition, but also probably generate some additional growth.
That's what it's for.
Thank you.
I'm going to speculate that with the new air service, that your international visitors are going to increase even more. Councilwoman Scholl.
Jerry, can you talk a little bit about the building improvements you'd like to see happen at the Chamber and the Visitor Center?
I don't know if you've been to our building lately, but we haven't had any renovations in the building since 2001. We currently have blue duct tape in the visitor center to hold creases of torn carpet. And so we're going to be looking at those pieces first. We also want to look at more staffing because we are very busy and it's becoming more busy, so we need to take a look at that. And also we need to take a look at customer service training to make sure that all of our professionals are ready for our visitors.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments for council? Any public comment?
No, Mayor.
All right, thank you all. I entertain a motion at this point.
Mayor, move to approve city contract number 2019-098.
Second.
Motion and second, please vote.
Passes 7-0.
All right, let's move on to item 10D, please.
Approval of construction cost reimbursement to Creekview Housing LLC in accordance with previously approved city contract for construction of sewer and drainage improvements across the Creekview Village development, and award a city contract to Lion Engineering for post-design services for water, sewer, and drainage improvements in and near the Creekview Village development.
Great. Thank you. Mr. Mayor, members of council, Steve Oroz with Public Works. This item is a little different It's we're able to partner with a business development in town to install our infrastructure and their infrastructure at the same time, both maximizing the efficiencies. Our Sundog trunk main project basically would go, the line looks really good on this here, but not on the screen. There you go, it's a little there. Basically, our Sundog trunk main alignment comes along Miller Valley, through the site, and down into the creek and continues on. That is a project we've been under design for some time, and this development came up. We saw an opportunity to not go in after their apartment complex was built and tear up their brand new asphalt and put a sewer line through there. We saw a partnering opportunity, and we negotiated and worked forward through that. We did accelerate our storm drain design to get to completion to fit their schedule. We did look at what is their responsibility as a development, is their costs as part of this project, and what is our costs that we would be incurring anyway. We went through that process with our design engineer, Lion Engineering, and through a development agreement that was previously approved by the council. We have this construction contract before you today. This is not necessarily a contract for you to approve, it's our ability to pay our share of the construction improvements to the development people that are actually performing the work. We're not paying them ahead of time. We do have our regulations and standards that we've designed the project to. They will be designing or constructing to those standards. We will be inspecting the project. We have our design engineer performing our post-design services, and their engineer is doing their portion of the work too. The split of costs between the city and the developer is roughly 32% to 68%, us with the 68%. So the amount that we're asking for today, approval to expend up to, is the $556,524.28 for the construction. In parallel with that, we're looking for a post-design contract with Lion Engineering to do our side of the as-built and the inspections that are needed on their part. So that's a two-part motion today. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
Questions or comments from the council? Councilman Good.
No, my original concerns were just the payment process. So, and as I understand it now, we'll be closely monitoring the construction, inspections and approvals, and then compensating them periodically as that progresses.
Yeah, per the terms of the development agreement, as we get an invoice, we will review it, obviously, process it like we do any other invoices that we have for construction projects, ensuring that what they're invoicing is actually in the ground and completed and inspected, and then we would pay the invoice. We're asking for basically a maximum not to exceed.
I think it's turning out to be pretty timely for this development to become forward at the same time that we were planning on handling those sewer upgrades and repairs. So it's really beneficial for the city to have a partner to help defer the costs.
Very much so.
Thanks.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you, Steve. We'll entertain a motion.
Mayor, I move to approve construction cost reimbursement to Creekview Housing LLC per city contract number 2018-243 in an amount not to exceed $556,524.28 and award city contract number 2019-093.
Second.
I have a motion. Second, please vote.
Passes 7-0.
All right, let's move on to item 10E.
Award of city contract to Capital Improvements LLC for the Hillcrest Storm Drain Project and contract amendment for post-design services with Kimley Horn.
Thank you. Steve Oroz again. This project is a storm drain and drainage improvement project. which, as you've seen, our Robinson Drive project right now is currently under construction. These projects were developed over time, and the projects do connect. There is a storm drain system that connects in Robinson, or will be in Robinson, and will go down Butterfield. This project will extend the drainage into the Hillcrest area. Most of these streets in this area, Bloom and the Unnamed Alley and Hillcrest, are all unpaved. There is standing water occasionally after monsoons. It's kind of a mess that we're trying to improve. This project was designed to pave and make some of the roadways either asphalt or concrete, depending on their widths, installing a storm drain, and basically improving the drainage to get it into a channel away from the homeowners. The project was publicly bid. The low bid of $272,000 was from the Capital Improvements, who's also doing the Robinson Drive project. So there'll be a very seamless coordination of the two improvements, making sure the projects connect, simplifying a lot of things. So that was very good to see that. The bid came in below the engineer's estimate for obvious reasons there. And then the Kimley Horn post-design service contract is to basically do the as-builts and the inspections that they need for the engineer of record documents that are needed. So if there's any questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
Questions or comments from the council? If not, we'll entertain a motion.
Mayor, I move to award city contract number 2019-091 to Capital Improvements LLC and approve contract amendment A4 to city contract number 2017-046A4 with Kimley Horn.
Second.
We have a motion and second. Please vote.
Passes 7-0.
Thank you, Steve. Let's move on to item 10F.
Approval of amendment number 1 for potable water with Bridgepoint Communities LLC for the redevelopment of commercial office spaces to a permanent and temporary support services housing at 1040 Whipple Street.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Leslie Grazer, Water Resource Manager. This is a straightforward item. This is an existing water contract. It is asking to be amended in accordance with your policy for a one-time, one-year extension. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them, but I think everybody knows the location and the parties.
Yeah, thank you, Leslie. Any questions or comments from the council? Entertain a motion.
Mayor, recommend action, move to approve amendment number 1 to city contract number 2018-056A1.
Second.
Motion and second. Please vote.
Passes 7-0.
That was your shortest, easiest presentation ever.
Really? Yeah.
Thanks, Leslie. Item 10G.
Approval to purchase one 2019 Freightliner M2 106 chassis from Freightliner of Arizona and one pothole repair body from Bergkamp Incorporated using National Joint Powers Alliance contract.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Mike Carr, Fleet Services. This item is requesting permission to purchase a new pothole patch truck. The chassis will be purchased from Freightliner, Arizona using state contract pricing, and the body will be purchased from Bergkamp using NJPA pricing. The vehicle was reviewed and approved by the Fleet Asset Review Board for an FY19 purchase. The board considered the division needs, how the asset will be used, and the overall benefit to the city. Fleet Services, working in conjunction with the Streets Maintenance Division, is requesting permission to purchase a pothole patch truck to make hot mix asphalt patches on potholes, utility cuts, and small pavement repairs throughout the city. The truck is a self-contained unit and will be able to allow the crews to make long-lasting quality repairs. The current practice is to use a cold patch material to fill potholes and utility cuts, which are not permanent repairs. These temporary repairs must be revisited regularly to ensure the material is still in place and smooth. Additionally, permanent pavement repairs of this size must be done in batches within the vicinity of another to justify the purchase of asphalt by the ton. The patch truck will allow them to repair these areas individually, resulting in more timely permanent repairs. The leftover material from large jobs can be placed in the truck, kept warm, and used at later times to make additional repairs. This will reduce the amount of waste normally produced doing small batch repairs. During the winter months, when the asphalt plant is not running regularly or immediately following a storm, the Streets Division can use cold mix in the patch truck. By heating up the cold mix, it is much more flexible and bonds better to the existing asphalt, making it more effective as a temporary repair. Both the chassis and body will be purchased using a competitively bid contract, ensuring the best pricing for the city of Prescott. Funding of $215,370.05 is available in the FY19 street maintenance budget. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I'm envious you get to play with big trucks.
Yeah.
You get to buy
I
a
get
big
to
truck.
buy 'em, they get to play.
Yeah, exactly. Questions or comments from the council? We'll entertain a motion.
Well, I just want to make sure that this will eliminate the complaints about potholes.
Guaranteed. He wants a full guarantee on that.
I can't guarantee anything.
Thank you.
I don't think he committed to that, Councilman. Entertain a motion there.
I move to
want Phil
approve.
to take ownership of the potholes.
Want a motion, Mayor?
Sure.
Move to approve city contract number 2019-085 with Freightliner of Arizona for $95,915.05, and city contract number 2019-086 with Bergkamp Incorporated for $119,455.
Second.
Motion and second. Please vote.
Passes 7-0.
There's a lot of images out there regarding 9/11, a lot of memories that we all have. One of my most vivid memories was George W. Bush was actually in the site with the firefighters, and he grabbed a bullhorn, and you guys all remember this. And his quote when he grabbed that bullhorn was this: "I can hear you, the rest of the world hears you, and the people who knocked these buildings down will hear all of us soon." And sure enough, they did. One more quote from George W. Bush, and I was very grateful personally that he was leading our country at this time. I thought he did a tremendous job. This quote occurred, of course, after the 9/11 tragedy. "Terrorist attacks can shake the foundations of our biggest buildings, but they cannot touch the foundation of America. These acts shatter steel, but they cannot dent the steel of American resolve."
Mayor, I also have a quote.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
This one is from Sandy Dahl, wife of pilot of Flight 93, Jason Dahl. If we learn nothing else from this tragedy, we learn that life is short and there is no time for hate.
Very good. Thank you. This meeting is adjourned.
I hate leaving.
Very nice.